Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Early voting for Korea's local elections began this morning. Polling stations will remain open until 6 p.m. tomorrow, and eligible voters can cast their ballots at any of the early voting locations nationwide, regardless of their registered address. Korea and the United States plan to hold a two-day security meeting in Seoul starting next Tuesday for follow-up consultations on commitments outlined in the recent joint fact sheet signed in November following the summit between Presidents Yi and Trump. U.S. and Iranian negotiators have reportedly reached a tentative deal to extend their ceasefire and begin nuclear talks. Still, U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to sign off on the agreement, and Iran has not officially confirmed it has accepted the deal. Korea's first local elections of the Lee administration are now underway as early voting began today at 6 a.m. For more on this, we have our political correspondent An Sung-jin at one of the locations. So Sung-jin, tell us where you are.
Good morning, Eunji. I'm at a community center in Yongsan-gu District, Seoul, where early voting is taking place. I've been out here since 7 a.m., a little past an hour since the opening at 6 a.m. We've seen a steady amount of people come in even during the early hours, either before work or on their way from a morning routine. There are around 3,570 early voting locations nationwide, and many have come with their hope that the ballot will decide the future of their local area. Have a listen to some of what the voters have to say during the early hours.
I always try to vote early on the first day before heading to work. There's a candidate that I believe will work for our community, so I came out to cast my vote.
Coming to the first day of early voting with my mom has kind of become a routine every election, so we came out again this morning to vote. I voted for someone I hope will do good work for this district.
Right, then Sung-jin, for those who would like to participate in today's early voting, what should they keep in mind?
Right, polling stations opened at 6 a.m. and will remain open until 6 p.m. both today and tomorrow. For early voting, eligible voters can vote nationwide regardless of their registered address, but they must bring a government-issued ID. Now, most voters around the nationwide will receive 7 ballots, but those holding a parliamentary by-election will receive an additional ballot. The National Election Commission says live video footage of ballot storage facilities will be made available to the public around the clock. Monitoring ballot storage conditions through live screens from regional election commission offices will also be available. While local elections determine regional leadership, they're also widely seen as something of a midterm test for the central government. As recent polls show narrowing gaps between ruling and opposition party candidates will continue their campaigning till voting day next week, Wednesday. That's all I have for now, but I will be back with more updates for our later newscast.
All right, that was our An Sung-jin standing by live at an early voting location. Meanwhile, Korea and the United States will hold a two-day inaugural meeting in Seoul next week to launch follow-up consultations on security commitments outlined in the allies' recent joint fact sheet. The talks will take place on June 2nd and 3rd and bring together senior officials from diplomacy, defense, energy, nuclear safety, and technology agencies from both countries. Seoul's delegation will be led by First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yun-ju, while the U.S. side will be headed by Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Allison Hooker. The consultations are expected to focus on implementing bilateral security and strategic cooperation measures discussed during the Korea-U.S. summit, amid efforts to modernize the alliance in areas including advanced technology, energy security, and extended deterrence. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to visit North Korea soon, possibly as early as next week. This will be his first trip to Pyongyang in around 7 years. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Andrew Millard, head of the Department of International Relations at Changwon National University. Professor Millard, thanks for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me again.
So, what could Xi's visit mean for security on the Korean Peninsula?
So As you just said, firstly, this has not been 100% confirmed that Xi is actually going to visit Pyongyang. However, all of the signs are very strong that he will be visiting, and probably very soon, within the next couple of weeks. Now, this is very important because over the past few weeks especially, Xi Jinping has been very busy in China. He's had delegations coming in from the US, from Russia, from Pakistan, from Serbia. So far in 2026, Xi Jinping has not been outside of China. So this is quite significant that he's choosing North Korea, that he's choosing Pyongyang for his first overseas summit of the year. Now, why is he doing this? Arguably, it's because even though we have the China, Russia, North Korea sort of partnership that is growing, over the past couple of years, within that, really, North Korea and Russia have been deepening their ties, especially in security and sort of security partnerships and so on. And so really, this is an opportunity for Xi Jinping to go to Pyongyang and say, look, China is still a key strategic partner in Northeast Asia when it comes to security issues. Of course, he's likely to discuss other trade issues and things like that, but really I think security is going to be the key one. And basically at the moment we see North Korea and Russia developing those ties. China has been pushed a little bit to the side, so he'll want to make sure that China is at the forefront of all security issues in North Korea, in the region.
Right, and this week Singapore's foreign minister was on a rare trip to both South and North Korea, and he was a member of the cabinet in Singapore when the country hosted the first summit meeting between the leaders of North Korea and the United States in 2018, right? So some analysts see this as North Korea's way of indirectly sort of signaling to Washington that it's open to dialogue again. What's your take on this?
So again, they're very sort of secretive. Nothing has been made clear. Nothing has been sort of made official. So when we have these Singaporean summits going to, and it's been China, North Korea, South Korea, so it's not specifically to North Korea, we can't really read too much into it until after it's happened and they make some official statements about what has been discussed. Now, on the other hand, generally, North Korea has been quite indirect in sort of announcing its sort of changes in policies, whether it wants to participate in dialogue or not. So that's another signal that maybe there is some change happening. But again, we shouldn't really read too much into it as of yet. So far, there's been no major indication from North Korea that it's ready to restart dialogue, and especially to restart negotiations, even if it does start dialogue. Now, on the other hand, we could also say that for North Korea, this is a perfect opportunity to start dialogue because we have the US just been to China, and Donald Trump has quite a good relationship with Xi Jinping. Generally, Donald Trump has had a pretty good relationship with Vladimir Putin in Russia as well. And so we could say that actually for North Korea, maybe now is a good time to restart the dialogue, and they can do it through Singapore.
Right, we'll have to see how that goes then. North Korea this week said it tested AI-guided missiles and artillery rockets designed for modern warfare. So how exactly are how advanced are North Korea's weapons capabilities at this point?
In terms of how advanced their capabilities are, it's really hard for anyone to say unless they're in North Korea. We should be quite careful. A lot of countries, but especially North Korea, will say things that maybe are not entirely true. However, it was quite significant, and there's a couple of things we should look at. Firstly, these tests were with short-range missiles, so really they're only sort of focusing on really South Korea. These short-range missiles, they're not going to go to China, obviously, or Russia. They're not really going to go to Japan. So this was a little bit of a warning to South Korea. Maybe the North saying, look, we know in South Korea, semiconductor AI is booming. We are not far behind. So don't make that mistake that North Korea is not advancing either. But we also need to ask this question, where is this technology coming from? Is this being developed inside North Korea based on their own technologies? Or, and I think more likely, is this showing the further deepening security ties, alliance between North Korea and Russia, who may be supplying the North with this AI capabilities. But altogether, on the whole, I don't think we should be surprised that North Korea is using AI. Any country that is not looking towards that is going to be behind. So I think it's not that unexpected.
I see. And as for South Korea, the country is seeking to launch its first nuclear power submarine by the mid-2030s, and that's aimed at countering the North submarine-launched nuclear missile threats. So could you just briefly tell us how realistic this goal is?
On the whole, it's relatively realistic. It's maybe a little bit aggressive. So if we compare, for example, with the AUKUS deal, so the Australia, UK, US deal from a couple of years ago, they are looking to, again, take delivery of the first submarines in the early 2030s. So similar sort of timeline, around 10 years. However, in South Korea, there may be a few more obstacles. So again, next week, they're going to have these security talks. Really, the issue of nuclear fuel in South Korea, it's a little bit more sensitive than it was in Australia for various reasons. So that may be an issue that slightly delays the production. But also, if we have production of 10 years, we also need to consider that the operations of these submarines are going to be very different. The training of the sailors, the maintenance, all of these issues come into effect. So I think if they're quite aggressive, it's relatively realistic, but we should be looking mid-30s to late 30s, in all honesty.
I see. All right, Professor Miller, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The United States and Iran appear closer to a tentative deal aimed at ending the war, with signs of a possible shift in Tehran's stance on nuclear talks. But final approval is still needed, with U.S. President Donald Trump yet to give the green light. Our Kim Jun-ho reports.
The United States and Iran have tentatively agreed to a 60-day memorandum of understanding to extend their ceasefire and launch talks on Iran's nuclear program. Citing U.S. and regional sources involved in the mediation, Axios reported Thursday local time that most terms had been settled on as of Tuesday. Still, U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to sign off on the deal, and Iran has not officially confirmed its acceptance. The proposed MOU would ensure free passage through the Strait of Hormuz with no shipping tolls, and Iran required to clear all mines within 30 days. U.S. naval blockade would also be eased gradually, in line with the recovery of commercial shipping traffic. On the nuclear front, Iran would pledge not to pursue nuclear weapons, while initial talks during the 60-day period would focus on Tehran's highly enriched uranium and enrichment activities. If nuclear issues move forward, Washington in return would discuss sanctions relief, frozen asset releases, and humanitarian support for Iran. But if Iran fails to deliver on nuclear commitments, Trump warned that both economic and military options remain in play. Key sticking points still need to be resolved, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance saying Thursday that talks with Iran were close but not there yet.
And we're in a position where we could substantially step back their nuclear program, not just during the term of this president, but over the long term. That's a very, very good thing for the American people. So we're not there yet, but we're very close and we're going to keep on working at it.
Yet tensions remain high as sporadic clashes continue. Iranian media reported Thursday local time that the military launched a missile from southern Iran toward an unidentified target, while an explosion was reported near the Strait of Hormuz. Some sources also raised the possibility of a maritime clash in the Persian Gulf. Amid the tensions, Pakistan's foreign minister will visit Washington Friday local time for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, with regional security expected to be on the agenda. Kim Jun-ho, Arirang News.
Israel has carried out its first airstrike on the Beirut area in nearly 3 weeks, targeting a commander linked to an Iranian militia operating alongside Hezbollah. The strike comes despite weeks of reported pressure from the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump to avoid attacks on the Lebanese capital during a fragile ceasefire. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The Israeli military says it carried out an airstrike Thursday local time in the southern suburbs of Beirut, marking the first Israeli strike on the Lebanese capital area in nearly 3 weeks amid escalating tensions with the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. An Israeli security source identified the target as Ali al-Husni, the head of the missile force in the Imam Hossein division, an Iranian militia that operates alongside Hezbollah. It remains unclear whether he was killed. The Israeli military said additional details would be released later. According to Lebanese media, the strike hit the Shuwaifat area just south of Beirut. Lebanese security officials said 2 precision missiles targeted a building in the capital's southern suburbs. There was no immediate comment from Hezbollah or Iran. Israeli officials say the military had refrained from carrying out strikes in Beirut for the past 3 weeks following requests from Washington. However, Israeli surveillance drones have continued flying over Beirut on a near-daily basis. 2 Israeli security sources said Thursday's operation came after what they described as very intense dialogue with the Trump administration in recent days. The strike was the first on Beirut since May 6, when an Israeli attack killed Ahmad Galeb Bailut, a commander in Hezbollah's elite Radwan force. The latest attack deals another blow to a ceasefire announced by Washington on April 16th that was meant to halt months of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the Middle East war is beginning to weigh on Korea's real economy, with production, consumption, and investment all declining in April. The Ministry of Data and Statistics said this morning that industrial production across sectors fell 0.6% from the previous month, marking the first decline in 3 months. Petroleum refining output plunged about 19%, marking the sharpest decline in 37 years. Auto production fell 10%, while in contrast, semiconductor output rose more than 3%. Domestic demand and investment also showed weakness, with both the retail sales index and facility investment falling 3.6% from the previous month. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is expected to visit South Korea next week for the second time in around 7 months. According to industry sources on Thursday, Huang will arrive after wrapping up GTC Taipei 2026, NVIDIA's annual AI conference running June 1st through 4th in Taipei. During the visit, he's expected to meet executives from major Korean chip makers, including Samsung Electronics and SK hynix. Talks are likely to center on high-bandwidth memory, next-generation AI accelerators, and possible foundry cooperation. Huang is also reportedly set to meet LG Chairman Koo Kwang-mo to discuss expanding cooperation in physical AI. Additional meetings with Korean tech firms such as Naver are expected to focus on broader AI partnerships in cloud computing and emerging technologies. With humanoid robot monks making the headlines this week, Buddhism is increasingly adapting to modern culture and trends to connect with younger generations. Our culture correspondent Cho Young-eun has the story.
The Lotus Lantern Festival is a Korean celebration with more than 1,200 years of history. But this year, it was joined by some striking new figures. Humanoid robot monks, dressed in traditional robes, took part in the parade, drawing attention from visitors and the media alike. Among them was Gabi, the robot monk that became a focal point after receiving Buddhist precepts.
에너지를 아끼고 과충전이 않는 것입니다. 과충전 하지 않겠습니까? 예, 않겠습니다.
This transformation is becoming visible far beyond temples and festivals. Buddhist-themed brands have recently gained popularity among younger generations, turning spiritual messages into relatable cultural experiences and lifestyle content.
These days, Buddhism feels pretty hip among people my age, so I think it's great that more content like this is being created.
T-shirts featuring illustrated Buddha characters, key rings, and social media-friendly designs reinterpret Buddhist teachings with humor and warmth. Even celebrations surrounding Buddha's birthday are increasingly adopting elements of Korea's fandom culture.
There's something comforting and approachable about it. It gives people a chance to reflect on themselves and let go of some of the pressure they carry. So I think that's why it resonates positively with people.
By offering cultural experiences, religion is increasingly serving as a source of comfort, enjoyment, and even daily routine.
We think many young people struggle with uncertainty about life, and Buddhism offers realistic guidance and comfort, which is why we try to reflect those messages in our items.
Blending its open nature with technology and trends, Buddhism is becoming more accessible and engaging. 조영은, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Switzerland, a man stabbed 3 people at a train station in the Swiss city of Winterthur on Thursday in what police called, quote, an act of terror. The suspect is a 31-year-old Swiss-Turkish dual national who had been flagged in 2015 for distributing Islamic State propaganda. Investigators believe the man acted alone. Days before the attack, he was briefly held at a psychiatric facility after making alarming calls to police, but was released on Wednesday after being cleared as non-dangerous. 2 victims were discharged from hospital. The third underwent emergency surgery. In Kenya, a fire at a girls' boarding school killed at least 16 students and injured 79 others. The fire started just after midnight on Thursday. Doors on the upper floor where the blaze started were initially locked, and some students died after jumping from windows trying to escape. Several survivors told first responders a student had set fire to a mattress, though authorities have not confirmed the cause. The school has more than 800 students aged between 15 and 18. The U.S. Treasury has launched the Trump Accounts app nationwide. The app went live on Thursday, allowing parents to open investment accounts for children born between 2025 and 2028 with a $1,000 government seed deposit that will reportedly be deposited from July 4th. Parents, family members, and employers can contribute up to $5,000 annually, with funds automatically invested in a low-cost index fund with gains only taxed when withdrawn. The app was built with trading platform Robinhood and custodian bank BNY. An Austrian court sentenced a 21-year-old man to 15 years in prison on Thursday for plotting an attack on Taylor Swift's Vienna concerts in August 2024. The defendant planned to target crowds outside the stadium with knives and explosives. Authorities raided his home the day before the scheduled performances and found bomb-making materials. The planned attacks forced the cancellation of all 3 shows. A second defendant in the same case received a 12-year sentence.
We're looking at bright, sunny, and hot conditions through the weekend. Temperatures will continue climbing day by day, and more regions are expected to rise above 30 degrees Celsius as we head into Sunday. And again, strong sunshine will push UV levels very high nationwide. Along the south coast and in Jeju, UV levels could even reach the extreme category during the day. So sunscreen, hats, and plenty of water will definitely be essential today, and ozone levels are also expected to worsen this afternoon. As for daily highs, Seoul and Daejeon will be getting up to 28 degrees Celsius, Daegu at 29 degrees, but Busan and Jeju will be a bit more comfortable at 25 degrees. Then isolated showers are possible later today in inland western Gyeongsang-Namdo province. Warm and mostly sunny days will continue through next week, with afternoon highs hovering around 30 degrees in the capital.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.